Even at home, how many parents ignore locking medicine cabinets, leaving sharp tools within reach of children? How many fires have started because someone thought, I'll blow that candle out later? How many accidents happen because someone left the wet floor without a warning sign? We forget that the cost of neglect is always higher than the cost of caution. For organizations, safety must be the foundation, not the decoration. No deadline, no budget, no profit is worth a human life. Cutting corners on safety is like building a castle on sand. It will collapse. And the price will be paid in blood and sorrow. The airlines, the transport companies, the factories, the hospitals, the schools, every single one must remember this. When they forget, the news becomes filled with names that should have gone home to their families but never did. I once met a survivor of a plane crash. He said the worst part was not the crash itself, but knowing it could have been prevented. The cracks were there, the warnings were there, but someone chose to ignore them. That knowing was more painful than the broken bones. Because every disaster is a message written too late. You could have prevented this. Let that message not reach your life, your workplace, your choices. Safety is not fear. Safety is respect. For life, for people, for the future. The worker who checks the bolts twice, the driver who slows down at every crossing, the mother who child-proofs every room, the engineer who refuses to rush an inspection, they are not paranoid. They are heroes in quiet ways. They save lives without anyone clapping for them. But without them, the world would collapse into chaos. Your choices today decide whether someone else gets to live tomorrow, whether they get to see their family again, whether they get to finish their story. Every shortcut skipped, every warning ignored, every sign dismissed is a silent invitation for tragedy to strike. The responsibility of safety belongs to all of us, not just pilots or engineers or governments. Every human being shares this burden because every human life matters. Gratitude is the only real way to live. Because everything you are holding right now, everything you have right now, can disappear in a heartbeat. This life that you take for granted, the breath you just took, the ability to see the sunlight, the simple joy of walking on your own feet, is not owed to you. It is a gift. A priceless, fragile, temporary gift that can be taken without warning, without mercy, without explanation. When you live without gratitude, you are blind to the miracles happening around you every single day. You are asleep in a world bursting with beauty. I once met a woman who survived a terrible accident. Before that day, she hated her life, complained about her job, her relationship, her body, everything. But after the accident, when she woke up in a hospital bed, broken and bruised, she said something that shook my soul. All I prayed for was to be able to walk to the bathroom on my own. Not a car, not money, not fame. Just to stand without pain. You see, you only understand the value of your legs when you can't use them. You only appreciate breathing when the doctor says your lungs are failing. You only realize the treasure of an ordinary day when you lose the chance to live another one. Gratitude makes life rich, even when the world says you have nothing. I've seen a poor farmer with torn clothes laugh louder and smile brighter than a millionaire sitting in silence on his leather couch. Why? Because that farmer wakes up thankful for the sunrise, for the rain that feeds his crops, for the warm embrace of his children. The millionaire, drowned in comparison, craving more, feels empty because he's forgotten how to be grateful for what he already has. Gratitude is the wealth that money can never buy. Even in suffering, gratitude transforms the heart. There was a man who lost his entire business overnight. Everything he built crumbled. But when I asked how he was coping, he said, "At least my family is safe. At least I have a chance to start again. So many don't." That is gratitude in its purest, strongest form. When life breaks you and you can still find something to say thank you for, you have conquered the world's worst storms. Because gratitude is not for perfect moments. It's for real life. The messy, painful, unpredictable life that still offers you small joys if you choose to see them. Think about the last time you were stuck in traffic, angry, impatient, frustrated. Did you stop to thank life that you have a car to drive? That you have legs that can walk, a mind that can think, eyes that can see the road? Most don't. Most curse what they have because they forget that millions of others would give anything to trade places. The man begging at the roadside would dance to sit in your traffic jam. The patient in the hospital would give anything to live your ordinary, boring day. Gratitude makes love deeper, relationships stronger. When you thank your partner for the little things they do, making tea, folding clothes, smiling at you when you're tired, they feel seen, valued, cherished. When you ignore these things, they wither. How many marriages die not from hate, but from the starvation of gratitude? A simple thank you can save a bond that silence would slowly destroy. Gratitude is not weakness. It is the power that holds the heart alive. Even in moments of fear, gratitude gives you courage. The soldier on the battlefield, terrified for his life, thinks of his family waiting at home. That thought, that grateful memory, gives him strength to keep going. The mother in pain during childbirth holds her newborn and forgets the agony, overwhelmed with gratitude for life itself. Gratitude turns suffering into meaning. It turns loss into wisdom. It turns endings into new beginnings. I once spoke with an old man who had lost everything, his home, his savings, his health. Yet he sat smiling, feeding birds in the park. When I asked him why he was at peace, he said, "Because I woke up today, because the sky is blue, because I can still breathe." That is the wisdom life tries to teach us every day. But we are too busy to hear it. Gratitude is the only real way to live. Because without it, no success feels enough, no joy feels complete, no dream feels fulfilling. Tragedy must inspire change, not just sympathy. Because sympathy alone cannot heal wounds, cannot rebuild broken systems, cannot prevent the next disaster from tearing apart more lives. Sympathy is easy, it is comfortable, it costs nothing. You watch the news of a terrible crash, of innocent lives lost, of families torn apart, and you feel a sting in your heart. Maybe you cry, maybe you whisper a prayer, maybe you post a line on social media. So sad. R.I.P. And then what? You return to your life. You forget. But the families who lost their loved ones, mothers without sons, children without fathers, wives without husbands, they do not forget. Their grief lives on long after the headlines fade. If tragedy only leaves behind sorrow and pity, it is wasted pain. It must leave behind lessons, actions, changes that ensure such pain is not repeated. When an aeroplane falls from the sky, killing hundreds, the world weeps for a moment. But what the world needs more than tears is truth. What went wrong? Why did it happen? Who ignored the warning signs? What can be fixed before the next plane takes off? Real change demands courage, not comfort. It demands that people stand up, demand answers, demand justice, demand reform. Because without change, tragedy is just a story, repeated endlessly, with new names, new faces, new graves. Discover our truth. The rules of our past demand reform. Without change, tragedy is just a story repeated endlessly, with new names, new faces, new graves. I remember the story of a city that flooded every year, drowning homes, sweeping away lives. And every year the politicians promised new dams, better drainage, stronger defenses. But nothing changed. Money vanished into pockets. Plans gathered dust. Until one year, the flood took hundreds of children's lives. That time, the anger was too loud to silence. The people stood together, demanded action, refused to move until the government built what they had promised for years, and finally change came. It was too late for the lost ones, but it saved thousands in the years that followed. This is what tragedy must do. Not paralyze us with sadness, but push us to fight harder, build better, care deeper. Even in our personal lives, tragedy must shape our actions. When you lose someone suddenly, a friend in an accident, a cousin to disease, you feel the crushing weight of things unsaid, moments missed. But if you let that loss wake you up, if you start calling your loved ones more often, if you start forgiving faster, loving louder, living fuller, then the tragedy births change. The pain plants purpose. I knew a woman who lost her husband to a heart attack because he ignored his health. She turned that grief into power, opened a wellness center, taught thousands to eat better, live stronger, care for their hearts. A loss became a light for others. History is full of tragedies that forced the world to evolve. Factories that burned, killing workers because of locked doors. Those deaths birthed new laws for worker safety. Planes that crashed because of flaws in design. Those failures forced engineers to rethink, redesign, rebuild safer skies. But only because people refused to settle for sympathy. They demanded change. They turned their tears into action. Even as ordinary people, we carry this responsibility. When you hear of a woman harmed because no one spoke up, will you remain silent the next time? When you see a child suffer because of neglect, will you walk past or will you intervene? When a tragedy shakes your community, will you wait for someone else to fix it or will you rise? Change does not begin in government buildings or corporate boardrooms. It begins in hearts that refuse to accept that suffering is normal, that loss is fate, that mistakes are forever. I met a young man who lost his sister in a road accident caused by drunk driving. He could have drowned in grief. Instead, he toured schools, teaching teenagers about the deadly risks of drunk driving. He saved lives because of the life he lost. His pain became a shield for others. This is the highest purpose of tragedy, not to break us, but to awaken us. When we let tragedy inspire change, the lost lives are not lost in vain. They become the reason the world grows safer, kinder, wiser. When we stop at sympathy, the cycle of pain continues, the news keeps repeating, the tears keep falling. But when we rise from grief into action, we honor the lost by protecting the living. And so the truth stands before us, undeniable, unshakable, roaring like thunder in a silent room. Life is not promised, time is not unlimited, and safety is not a gentle request. It is a sacred responsibility. Every moment you breathe is a moment bought by the price of caution, care, and the choices of others. You are alive not because of luck, but because someone somewhere respected the value of life. Someone checked that machine twice, not someone else's story. They are lessons carved in blood and tears, messages written for you, warnings screaming from history itself. The question is, will you listen? Or will you wait to become the next tragic headline? Remember this forever. Sympathy comforts, but change saves. Sympathy sheds tears, but change prevents death. Sympathy writes out to you, not to mourn, but to rise. Not to sigh, but to build. Not to forget, but to act. When you hear about a plane crash, or a collapsed bridge, or an avoidable fire, don't just feel sadness. Feel fire. Feel a responsibility waking inside you. Ask, what can I do? What must I never neglect? Where must I speak up? What must I demand from the world and myself? There is no greatness in standing silent in the face of danger. There is no nobility in pretending all is well when the cracks are showing. The great men and women of history did not build legacies by avoiding discomfort. They faced the bitter truth and turned it into bold action. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Silence feeds tragedy. Action destroys it. Action saves lives. Look around your own life. Where are you ignoring small dangers, thinking they're too minor to matter? Is it in the workplace where safety rules are treated like boring obstacles? Is it in your health where you ignore the pain that keeps warning you something is wrong? Is it in your home where you leave risks unchecked because you think it won't happen to me? That's what every victim thought, until it did happen to them. Break that illusion. Live awake. Live responsible. And beyond safety, live grateful. Because nothing you hold right now is permanent. That familiar face you love could vanish without goodbye. That heartbeat you trust could stop before the sun sets. That normal, boring day you complain about could become the day you beg to have back. Gratitude is not a feel-good habit. It is a fierce, urgent way of living with your eyes open. Say thank you. Hug tighter. Forgive faster. Speak the truth sooner. Because the next hour is not promised. The world is filled with stories of people who thought they had time and didn't. Dreams left unspoken. Apologies left unsaid. Love left unexpressed. Don't be one of them. Let every tragedy remind you, time is precious. Life is fragile. Action is power. Change is duty. Because the price of ignoring these truths is always too high. Always too cruel. In the words of Mahatma Gandhi, be the change you wish to see in the world. Not tomorrow, not someday, now, today, right now is the only moment you control. The only moment where life can be protected, dreams can be lived, regrets can be avoided. Right now is the moment you can choose to be brave instead of passive, awake instead of blind, responsible instead of careless. So rise, not with fear, but with fire. Not with despair, but with determination. Stand guard over your life, over the lives of those around you. Speak when no one dares. Act when others wait. Care when the world shrugs. Refuse to let another tragedy go by without birthing change. Refuse to let another warning be ignored. Refuse to let safety, gratitude, and action be optional. Because you were not born to be silent. You were not born to be careless. You were born to matter. You were born to build a legacy of courage, of action, of real impact. The world is waiting not for your tears, but for your strength. Not for your sadness, but for your leadership. not for your excuses, but for your change. As Nelson Mandela said, it always seems impossible until it's done. So do the impossible. Break the chain of tragedy, become the spark that lights safety, responsibility, and gratitude in the hearts of others. Let your life be the proof that one soul can change the future, not by mourning the past, but by fighting for a better tomorrow.